In previous talks, I have discussed microRNAs. And microRNAs are very small strands of RNA. To give you just a little sense about how small they are about between 20 and 24 nucleotides long. Compare that to the DNA molecule in a human being, which is about 3 billion base pairs. In other words, in a typical strand of DNA, there's actually 6 billion nucleotides. So these microRNAs are very aptly named because they're very small. But just because they're small doesn't mean they're not important. And again, we've talked about how these small particles that were once thought to be junk have proven to have function. And one particular microRNA has a very interesting function that has never been seen before, never been discovered before. Anyway, it is called MIR 126-5P. That's the way scientists name them. MIR, as you might imagine, is microRNA. And the numbers just are way too technical to get into right now. But anyway, these microRNAs have a very interesting job that they perform in the cells that line our blood vessels. They're called endothelial cells, but you don't need to know that. But anyway, what happens is in those cells, with the blood coursing through these arteries at such a fast rate, there can be a high shear stress on the cell itself. And normally that would trigger a response that would lead to the death of a cell. But what happens in endothelial cells that are healthy is that the MIR 126-5P joins to a protein and forms a complex. And what happens next is that complex makes its way to the nucleus and is allowed into the nucleus, at which point it unfurls and displays a small poster. Some of them will say, "Buck up, little camper." Others will say, "Turn that frown upside down." Still others will have a cat hanging from a rope or a twig, and it will say, "Just hang in there." Well, actually, that's not what happens. But figuratively, that is what happens, because when a cell experiences stress, that signals to the DNA that there is something wrong with the cell and it needs to die. So you can imagine if a cell is starting to experience an invasion from a DNA, it'll feel this stress and will seek to destroy itself before the virus can take over. That's one possible. There's all kinds of different ways in which a cell may need to die in order to preserve the larger organism. But what happens is that when this microRNA 126-5P gets into the nucleus with its protein complex, inside the nucleus, it is released from the protein and it actually forms a bond with caspase 3. Caspase 3 is the key enzyme in killing a cell. And so what it does is it says to the cell, in effect, everything's okay. You do not need to kill yourself. Everything's okay. Everything's okay. Everything's okay. And this allows the endothelial cells to be able to not die. And this is very important because if the endothelial cells do not have this feature, what takes place is something that many of us are familiar with, and it's called the hardening of the arteries. And so this tiny little 20 to 24 nucleotide microRNA does something that has never been observed before, and that is it goes into the DNA itself. We're very familiar with the RNA going out of the DNA, but to have these microRNAs going in and influencing the nucleus itself is truly amazing. And I dare to bet that in time we're going to find that these kind of things are happening far more than we know. There are many microRNAs, and we are only beginning to understand their function. It adds another layer of complexity, another layer of wonder, another layer of information, another layer of top-down and bottom-up communication where all the information is not going just out from the DNA, but there's information and feedback coming to the DNA into the nucleus. This is an amazing find and gives me all the more reason to doubt Dawkins and all the more reason to see design. Take care.